So I haven't done one of these videos in a while, but I'm going to take you through how I created this. I'm going to take you behind the scenes on the shoot with me, explain what I'm doing. Then I'm going to take you through my workflow afterwards so you can see how I process the photos in order to get this image. Hi guys, welcome to another video, and I've got a slightly different setup today. I'm actually recording on a different camera and I have a different studio setup because this is a slightly different video. And if you've been here on my channel for any kind of time, you will have seen me do behind the scenes videos of photo shoots before. Back then I was only kind of time-lapsing the shoots and showing you what we got, and then maybe I'd be doing some vlogging with some of the models as well so you could understand what they were like behind the scenes. But I want to do something a little bit different now. So I'm actually going to show you some of the footage behind the scenes, but I'm going to explain the settings that I'm using, the position of the lighting and the camera, but most importantly I'm going to explain my thinking behind the shoot so you understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. You can apply some of that thinking to your own shoot as well. Not all of it's going to be relevant. I suggest that you watch as many photographers as possible to understand different ways of approaching this, because my approach is going to be very different to somebody else's approach, and that doesn't mean to say that one of us is right or wrong. It's just the style that you shoot in, and this is the art that we live in. And if you stick around to the end, there's probably going to be some bonus footage in there as well. So let's get into the shoot. Yeah, this is what I'm working with. We've got a lot of ambient light coming in, but it is fairly bright. I've just adjusted the camera settings. I'm using an ND filter as well, just to make sure that I can keep the lens wide open. I'm just going to pause that for a second. So as you can see here, I've got a 3-light setup. At the very front as my key light, I have a Godox AD400 in a 100cm softbox, and you can't see it from this angle, but it is quite close. I'll show you that in just a second as we move around. But this is at 1/8 power. To the left hand side I've got a AD300 in an 85cm softbox. So this is providing rim light from the left hand side so that it separates her from the background a little bit more. This light is actually angled more towards the camera, and I'll show you that in just a second, but you can see here how close that softbox is. I'm just going to pause it here. On the right hand side I have a Stripbox with an AD200 in it. I've got it gridded so it doesn't spill out onto the white pillar that's just behind her, as that will take away from her in the final image. But the AD200 in this case is also set to 1/16 power. You can kind of see where that light's pointing. It's not directly behind her, it's a little bit less towards the camera than the other rim light. This is just a little bit of extra light in here just to separate her a little bit more from the background than if I was using a 2-light setup. So if I come around to the other side, this will give you a much better view of where those lighting positions are, and you can see that the Stripbox, as I get closer, is a lot closer than it probably looked in the other shot. You can also see the position of the key light here. The octabox is not directly pointing at her. It kind of looks like it there, but I'm actually feathering the light across her. And the rear light is doing the same as well. It's not like a full-on, straight-on shot of her. So I've done like a lot of fitness shoots in the past, and you'll see that this is similar to lighting setups that I've used for fitness models and athletes, but it's not quite the same. There's less hard directional light because we don't really want to bring out all of the muscles or anything like that in this shoot. What we wanted to do was create something softer that was more about somebody that likes health and takes care of themselves through fitness, but that isn't like a hardcore athlete. And so we did some posing shots, but we wanted to get Angelina moving as well to create some dynamics within the shot, but we wanted to do that in a much kind of softer way. So I actually got her to just jump very, very gently off the floor. This gets the hair moving, this gets her muscles moving. So I didn't want her to jump too high. I wasn't trying to get her to show off her athletic prowess or anything like that. This was like a very, very small jump just so that I could time it as she's like coming off the floor. Brings about a sense of her kind of almost floating in the final photo as well. You'll have seen me use this in some of my other shots on Instagram. Another quick plug, if you're not following, you should be. Go and check out that. But essentially by doing this, we got like a really good image. So now I've imported the photos into Lightroom, and I'll show you what I did to those photos as well. You can see like all of the images that I've worked on already here. So I do most of my post-processing in Lightroom on an iPad Pro. This is actually a 2018 iPad Pro, so it's not even a new one, but it does what I need it to do, which is great. So what I'm going to do is go into the photo that we're going to process today. You can see this as the final image. What I'm going to do is actually show you what that looked like before. This is what that shot looked like straight out of camera. I'm going to take you through how I did this, and what I'm going to do is now go back to the original version in versions here, so you can see exactly what that looks like. Let me apply that. Great. And you can see the camera settings up here on the top left hand corner. I was shooting at 1/250th of a second at f2.8 at ISO 200. So the first thing to note is that I quite like the light on here already, and it was exactly what I was trying to do, which is kill some of that ambient light. You could see in the video how bright it was in the studio, so this is what that lighting was doing in order to kind of kill that ambient light a little bit and then freeze the motion of Angelina just hopping off the floor there. Now the first thing I want to do is crop this image to an Instagram crop, so that's 4:5. I want to get her feet just slightly off the floor there, and then I'm just going to bring this in a little bit tighter, move that up just very slightly. So I'm going to crop this to about here. The next thing that I'm going to look at is my presets panel. Now I have loads and loads of presets set up already that I've created from editing tons and tons of different photos. Don't worry so much about the amount of presets that I have in here. I'm terrible at filing anything, so I just create a new preset every time I change something drastically from one of the other presets that I'm using, but I use these as a base. Now the one that I'm going to use here is one called Angelina Dark Street, which looks like it's really dark, looks terrible at the moment, and to some extent it is. It's not like a finished thing, but this is the important thing to note about presets, is use them just as a basis for where you want to get to in the end. This shot wasn't actually shot for this preset, so it doesn't look great straight out of the camera, but this is great for you guys because you'll get to see what I do with this in order to make it pop. So the first thing I'm going to do is just adjust the exposure. As part of the preset, this messes about with the exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows and blacks, and you can see those settings in there, and I'll go through each of these panels so you can see what is going on here. So the exposure I'm actually going to set to 0 at the moment. It's still not perfect, but I'm going to show you a little trick that I do in just a second as well. The contrast is a little bit high for what I'm trying to do. You know, this is supposed to be like a soft image, so I'm just going to bring this down slightly to about maybe 30. The highlights coming down is great. The shadows are where I want them to be as well. So this is kind of a good starting point right now. In terms of color, I'm going to reduce this down to about 5400, and then I'm going to increase the tint up to about +9 or 10. Yeah, that looks good there. And then the vibrance and saturation as part of that preset has already been reduced somewhat. So color mix, I'm going to show you the settings on here. I'm not going to go through all of these right now, but you can see that I've messed about with the reds, also messed about with all of these, just so that these settings change to all of those. And you know, by all means pause it on the video if you want to see, if you want to get the exact tones that I'm using here, but at the same time, you know, your camera, the way that you shoot is going to make that very, very different. In terms of effects, this actually reduces the clarity down a little bit, and I'm going to do something with this in just a second, but there also is a small vignette. I'm actually going to take the vignette off, and I'll show you why in just a second. And then also as part of this preset, I have added some grain in there just to give it a little bit more texture. So that's it for that preset. Now, the first thing I want to do is actually bring up the radial tool here, and the reason why I'm doing this is I'm going to actually adjust this part of the image so that it's brighter, and I'm going to increase the exposure here, maybe like half a stop. Let's have a look where that goes. Yeah, maybe just under half a stop. That looks pretty good right there. And the reason why I use this instead of like the vignette tool is that you've got much more control using this. But this is why I didn't set the exposure for the entire image like perfectly. I want to keep that background a little bit darker and just highlight Angelina. So that's the first part of this. So I'm actually going to add another selective edit for the face here. I'm going to zoom just in here like this, and what I'm going to do is just increase the light on her face very slightly, maybe to there, and just reposition that a little bit. Okay, that's perfect. Actually, and then one other thing I'm going to do here is just take the texture down a little bit. So you don't want to do this too much because then it looks completely ridiculous, but I think maybe about here looks good. So that is now highlighting the face a little bit. So I'm very lucky that Angelina looks really good in real life as well. You could see on the slow motion video that I was taking of the setup with her in there, you can see what she looks like naturally. So I'm gonna retouch now, like on her face. There's like a few bits in there that I just want to remove, because I don't want to over process her face. You know, she is very beautiful, and I think that all I do typically when I'm editing on somebody's face, I'm just kind of touching up things that I think would make her look like herself on a really good day. So the light that I'm using here is probably not like specifically just for her face either, so you could see what she looks like in real life. I'm just going to touch up a few of the other bits here, and I'll do that really quickly as there's not a lot to do. So pretty much there. So that's all I'm going to do in terms of like Angelina herself. There are a few things in the image that, you know, maybe most people probably wouldn't notice them, but they would bug the hell out of me if I didn't fix them. So the first one is just here, and that is this spot on the wall, which I just need to increase this. I'm going to use, actually I'm going to change this to clone that. Let's just check how that looks from here. That's great. There's another couple of bits on this wall here that they kind of stick out to me, so I'm taking those out. So the other part is just around here, which is the curtain here was kind of slightly separated. I should have seen that when I was shooting, but I didn't. I'm gonna bring that in just here so that that looks like it's part of the curtain, which is great. And then at the bottom here, this section here, again, I'm just going to use the clone tool to brush this out. That looks much better. The only other thing here is just this section here. Now there's a number of ways that you could get rid of this. I'm going to clone most of this out. I'll just take you through that real quick. I'm not going to go all the way up to her legs on this because I want to clone that part out specifically. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just actually clone using these. Now you can paint on there. In my experience, you know, it's a bit hit and miss. It sometimes nails it, it sometimes doesn't do such a great job of it. And then we're going to do the same on the other side, so I'll show you that as I'm doing this. And then I'll add this in here. So that is, you know, a little bit rougher than I would normally do it. This is just for the video. So for you guys that stuck around to the end of the video, thank you so much. And as a bonus, I've got some extra footage from this shoot that I'm going to show you now. It's some footage of Angelina in glorious slow motion put to music. So I hope you enjoy that. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys in the next video.